Hello, my name is Fiona Clarke and I'm the Practice Director at David Miller Architects. Today I'd like to share our experience of adopting BIM, which stands for Building Information Modelling, the impact that it's had from a business point of view, and why we see BIM as a great opportunity. I'm approaching this from the point of view of a small practice. 3/4 of architects' practices in the UK have fewer than 10 people, so we represent a considerable part of the industry. We also believe that small practices have a lot to gain and certainly shouldn't see BIM as only for large projects and big practices. In fact, we see it as a game-changing technology that, when considered within the current economic environment, is an opportunity to really change the odds. To give a little context so that you know where we're coming from, we're a small practice based in central London, and nearly all of our work is within the centre of the city too. Over the past few years, we've grown from 4 to 14 people. Our workload is very typical for a small practice, and our projects include affordable housing, schools, student housing, mixed-use commercial work and some hotels, mainly budget hotels. Our founding partner, David Miller's personal background is in the delivery of complex three-dimensional projects, including the ones shown here. So we were always going to be looking for a three-dimensional model approach to advance the practice's capability. I'm going to explain the BIM opportunity by approaching it in 3 sections. Firstly, I'll describe our adoption of BIM. I'll then try and define the costs, and finally I'll quantify the business benefits as we see them. In terms of the process of adoption, we came to BIM through 3D modelling. We were already modelling all of our projects in 3D, then reverse engineering them into 2D to produce the drawings. Whilst this was working for us, it was inefficient and it created a lot of redundant output. So we were really looking for a more efficient way to produce information. This brought us to another big question, which was, why aren't we making enough money? We know that as architects we can add a lot of value in the design process. However, the time spent developing the idea really eats away at our fees. So in 2008 we started to look around for a better way of working. We were initially attracted to what turned out to be BIM by the ability to develop a project in a single environment without the waste created by our previous back and forth workflow. Then there was the embedded quality control and coordination. This was attractive as we were employing very talented but comparatively inexperienced staff. And then there was the consistency of output, which would generate confidence in the quality of our information. This is particularly important for a young practice if it's to be taken seriously. So for us, BIM tools initially just offered us a more efficient workflow. It was at this point that we really came to realise that as a small practice we had it easy when it came to the change management. The reasons that we say that is that we didn't have to convince the board or any middle managers, we just had to make the decision ourselves. We didn't do an ROI calculation, and to be honest we haven't actually ever met anyone else who has either. We could quite simply act on our instinct and experience, and our view was that this is going to happen, so we may as well just get on with it. The rollout, though, was still incremental. We did convert all of our workstations at the time, but then there were only 4 of us. All subsequent new starters got a BIM workstation. However, the initial decision was only the beginning of the process. In terms of a timeline, we've become steadily more sophisticated over the last 4 years, with an intensive push over the last 2. It would be a considerable challenge to go straight to level 2 BIM without a few practice runs. And again, as a small practice, we were lucky being able to cut our teeth on some smaller project where if we had got it wrong, we could easily have reversed back out into CAD. We started in 2008 with some initial training and went straight into a small £1 million residential building using the software to simply produce the drawings. We repeated this process a number of times on increasingly larger projects. However, we were still falling back into CAD on refurbishment projects and sometimes if we were under intense time pressure. At the end of 2009, we committed internally to use BIM tools on all projects, almost as a matter of principle. At this point, we hired an in-house trainer and BIM champion, and this led us to our first collaborative models. Our BIM champion developed a very intensive 6-day training schedule, broken down into 40-minute modules, so there were lots of opportunities and no excuses for everyone to do the training. That's now been followed up by BIM Boot Camp for new starters, which involves really intense training with no distractions in their first week with us. More recently, we've been producing QTOs, or quantity takeoffs, and we've developed an FF&E procurement model linked to another system called Codebook for our school projects. This has led us to changing how we're modelling, so our output is now more aligned with our clients' needs. In the last year, we've blown the BIM champion role apart, with individual members of the team taking responsibility to explore different parts of the process and share their experiences, and this was a sign to us that BIM was maturing within the practice. In turn, this has led us to our first BIM execution plans, our first facilities management models, rapid energy modelling, rapid cost modelling, and larger and more complex projects. During this evolution, we've also developed our own in-house BIM manual and a BIM plan of work, which define inputs, processes and outputs for each RIBA workstage. However, this has now all been superseded by the RIBA's BIM overlay and PAS 1192, which gives everyone a standardised approach to produce information and enabling them to share it. So, how much does it cost? We've calculated about £10,000 per workstation. This includes software, hardware and training. So for a small practice, it is a big investment. We've been spending around £30,000 a year over the last 4 years. This felt like a lot, especially early on when we were only 4 people. However, viewed in relation to technical staff costs and fee income, it starts to look a little less alarming, as you can see here. But we would ask, if you have high quality professional staff, why wouldn't you want them to have the best tools? And remember, the costs for a large practice are exactly the same, only scaled. So what has been the benefit to the business? We're definitely doing more for less, or, put more accurately, we're offering more for the same. We're sure that this has given us a competitive advantage in winning work. Being able to offer additional services has differentiated us in a difficult market. We're also confident that the consistency in our outputs has generated repeat business, not least because we've been able to drive efficiencies from project to project as our database of components has become richer and more refined. These 4 schools that you see here are all unique, but they're actually assembled using the same components. The new process is encouraging collaboration at a micro and macro level and refocusing the team on the end product rather than just project trackers and compliance reports. The virtual building is on the team's monitors and the office projector screens constantly. Design team meetings have become much more productive, with issues being resolved in the meeting rather than being taken away. The quality controlled output has also given our team confidence. BIM tools have reduced the drudgery of production of information, enabling our staff to punch way above their weight, which in turn has improved the team's motivation. And importantly, stakeholders can see exactly what they're going to get, which is managing their expectations and smoothing the project through the review and approval process. Again, this is working for us as a single source of information at a macro and a micro level, whether it's agreeing small power locations or signing off planning conditions. As a bonus, the new workflow has simplified design management and allowed us to build our internal processes around the BIM. This has actually had a great impact on our external accreditations as well. ISO 9001 Quality, ISO 14001 Environmental, and Investors in People were all positively affected by our BIM processes. In particular, the environmental accreditation, where the assessor was particularly impressed by the potential of BIM to reduce waste. Our current challenge is to move our office management and our output onto the cloud, making it potentially accessible everywhere. We're all looking forwards to snagging on site using the model on an iPad over the 3G network. So in terms of the bottom line, reviewing fee income against technical costs, the impact on the business is clear. In the initial stages, as we were learning, our costs and income remained fairly parallel. However, once we became more experienced and made the full commitment to use BIM tools on all projects, our costs have flattened out and our fee income has continued to rise. It's now parallel again, showing the maturity of BIM in the office. Some of this could be a consequence of a small practice growing and taking on larger projects, but that in itself could also be a consequence of using BIM tools. Looking at the cumulative construction values of the projects that we've worked on, you can see the impact that BIM is having on the business. Not only have we grown from 4 to 14 in the last 4 years, but the size of the projects we're working on has increased considerably. Our biggest project 4 years ago was a £2.5 million private domestic job. Very nice, but in effect a posh kitchen extension. Today we're on site with a £35 million mixed-use project in Barking as part of their regeneration scheme. So hopefully our positive experience at David Miller Architects will encourage other small practices to adopt BIM and to reap the benefits too.